We try as much as possible to breach a trade deficit between us and other countries. And if you know how the trade deficit is, it means that the volume of trade per each country and how that perhaps there's any kind of negativity in terms of the volumes against one country. So the United States, we have a huge trade deficit with the US because we tend to import a lot more from the US and we export less. And that very volume per the import and export of vice versa is termed the trade deficit. Now, we know that we also have that with some of the new countries we're trading with, vis-a-vis India. We're also talking about Brazil. And you spoke to also the Turkish ambassador to Ghana.
Yes, I did.
And was she worried about the trade deficit we have in the country, particularly when we know that the suits and things we wear usually are coming from their country?
Interesting. So that was one of the things on my mind when we're having that conversation, until she said, oh, what we are doing is actually more of a suitcase business, which is largely not recognized. I mean, you're a business person. So even though we're selling things, we see items in the boutiques from Turkey, they are not through the proper channels, if you like. You know, they've got this exhibition coming up.
So it means that people just buy from the shops and
people just buy from the shops.
So it's not from recognized out kind of.
No, it's not.
In terms of with government agencies, and so this agency has come to import this.
Yeah,
and that kind
of it's not on that scale.
But it should be in a position to, I believe, also quantify that, because that's what we also do with the Chinese.
Yeah, well, but you see, we've kind of gone forward with the Chinese because we see that they are very much interested in what we also do.
So we have huge investments with them.
Exactly. Yes. But they are hoping that they've got an exhibition coming up. That was one of the things we talked about. They are hoping that people will begin to appreciate what they have in Turkey, and then we'll begin to do proper business with them. But the conversation started with the coup. We couldn't have had a conversation without the recent attempted coup. We know that it was a failed coup, a large number of people arrested. We talked about that as well. And then, you know, she also talks about the fact that if you monitor international reports, it's as if their president does whatever he wants to do. But there's actually a good system in place. They're not practicing like what we practice in Ghana. It's not a straightforward presidential kind of thing. So she explains a few things. And it's an interesting conversation we bring back to you. So here's my sit-down conversation with the ambassador, Turkish ambassador to Ghana, Nesrin Bayazits. There's a lot of things happening within Turkey. You have your own internal politics, but what effect is it having on your international relations?
Well, first of all, I would like to explain the system of governing system in Turkey because it's related to all the international reportings we are receiving. Turkey is a parliamentary democracy, which means the legislative power is with the parliament, and executive power is with the government and the president. And then we have the judiciary, which is run by independent courts. So that means we have division of power. But when Turkey is on the news, it is reflected as if Turkey has a presidential system already. And mostly they are talking about our president doing this and doing that, and ignoring actually that Turkey is a parliamentary democracy and the government is headed by the prime minister. So just to, for the sake of your viewers, to explain that. As you are aware, we have had a terrible event on the 15th of July. That night I was in Ankara myself, and there was this renegade group of soldiers. They wanted to stage a coup. It was really dramatic. It was a bloody one. Almost 240 people were killed, and we had the Turkish parliament bombed. The president's life was attempted, and there was an assassination attempt on his life. It was a chaotic night, but thanks to the resilience of the Turkish people, it was possible to avoid this coup which was targeting not only the governing party or the president, but the democratic system, the democratic regime in Turkey. So it really showed to the world that both the opposition and the ruling party and all the political parties are against this coup. People were in the streets demonstrating almost a month, and on the 7th of August we had a big rally where all the political parties, their leaders were there, they gave speeches, so it was a great concrete demonstration of unity of the Turkish people against any coup.
But then you hear in the international wires arrest of persons who were not even involved in the coup, who are being kept in prison. I've heard about people who have been sacked from their jobs. I mean, how much truth is in all the things that we hear?
I think we have to clarify another point. International media is getting this news through certain resources, but one should also look at the Turkish media, Turkish Anatolian Agency, or we have independent like Hürriyet Daily. There are a lot of news coming out from Turkey also, but what we hear since the coup attempt is all these negative aspects of the aftermath. In any democratic country, you have to punish the coup attempters. There is no, I mean, Turkey is, the rule of law is well respected in Turkey because we are part of the European Convention on Human Rights. Turkey has been always part of Europe, and we are a member of NATO. So our legislation is in line with European legislation. And Turkey has also been an associate member of the European Union since 1963. So what happened after the coup attempt? You have to look who staged this coup. And there is a network called Fethullah terrorist organization. This organization has been deep in Turkish system since the 1980s, and actually they have been acting like a parallel state, and the coup was staged by the followers of this movement, and that's why it was such a big threat to Turkish democracy that you have to prosecute the followers, and it was a blood. There were attempts to kill the people, and people disarmed the soldiers. Soldiers shot at them. It was as to your question, those people who supported this coup, they are not. They are in every walk of life. They are in police, military, in the civil service, all strategic places. So what's happening in Turkey now is to bring these people to justice. It's not, there had been some arrests and suspensions, but there had been also some releases. You don't hear much about it. So it's a matter of first consolidating the national security of Turkey, Turkish people and Turkish democracy.
So it's not true that you probably have some innocent people in prison?
Innocent people will, of course, in a situation like this, you bring the people who are who did wrong to justice. But if there are innocent people, they will be released, of course. I mean, without evidence, you cannot prosecute people. And there were many confessions from the certain soldiers, like the top military aide of the our president, he was part of this movement, and like the top military aide of our general staff, he was part of that. So there are a number of people now, there are testimony, but the leader of this organization is Mr. Fethullah Gülen. He has been introduced as he's a scholar, religious scholar, but this is his movement is a religious congregation, and he lives in USA, America, yes. And of course we asked for extradition of him because he's a Turkish citizen after all.
Well, I think just to touch on that bit and then we'll move away. What a lot of people don't understand is how can somebody who lives in America be involved in a coup attempt in Turkey?
Well, this is he's a religious symbol of this movement. He's the leader of the movement, and he went to America in 1999 on his own wish, and he says that he's in self-exile. So to head a network, you don't need to be at the spots. You know, the communication means and all the facilities. So people, this has been going. He was in Turkey before, and this movement started in 1980s. So they are everywhere. But the head sitting there is, you know, it's a symbolic thing, of course.
So now that we're talking about security and terrorism, let's talk about how you see Ghana's security. How would you describe it?
I think we all have to be vigilant because terrorism is such a thing that it's impossible to avoid it. As long as you have people who are ready to blow themselves up and to interrupt the normality of the countries, you will get these concerns. I understand that in Ghana, because what happened in your neighborhood in Ivory Coast and then in Mali, and of course situation in Nigeria with Boko Haram, there is a reasonable concern. I understand that, and terrorism is something that we are also suffering. Turkey has been targeted. Even this morning on the news, there were 2 bomb attacks in one of our provinces. Yes, and if you look at the situation in the Middle East, our neighbors, both Syria and Iraq, they are having civil wars. So it's a difficult geography, but still Turkey is the only stable country in that region. So we have to be very, and of course we are also hosting more than 3 million refugees from Iraq, from Syria, and from Afghanistan, main groups. There are other nationalities also. So all the situation causes concern for the national security for everybody. I am also observing recently, in the last couple of months, you feel more security awareness in Ghana.
Sure. So let's move to your policies in Ghana as a country and as an embassy. I know that you embark on a few things in Ghana, but maybe you are rather very quiet. Not a lot of people know what you do. So take us through some of your foreign policies.
It's not quite true. I think many people know what we are doing here. I have to emphasize. Actually, Turkey is one of the first countries recognizing Ghana's independence. So we established our relationship in 1958, diplomatic relations, and even then, Turkey saw how important Ghana is. In 1964, we sent a resident ambassador to Ghana. However, in 1981, we had the austerity program, so we had to close down the embassy, and here we are. We came back 2010. So if you look at the intensity of our high-level visits, in the last 5 years, we have had 3 presidential visits. So actually, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, he paid his first overseas visit to Turkey in January 2013. So our president was recently here, end of February, beginning of March. It gives you an idea how we attach importance to our relations with Ghana, and we consider Ghana as a valuable development partner. If you look at the concrete work, we have had 24 agreements with Ghana, and our trade volume is increasing. In 2015, Ghana was our fourth trade partner in sub-Saharan Africa, and our two presidents decided that we should increase. They actually directed us to increase the trade volume to $1 billion by 2020. But if we look at this year's statistics for the first 6 months, actually it's doing very well, and I believe that we will reach that target before 2020. Maybe I can tell you a bit more about the Turkish projects in Ghana. As you know, there is a power barge in Tema that's owned by a Turkish company, and I am really happy to say that we are helping for easing of Dumsor here. And there is another Turkish company also investing in building power plant, so that will be like $200 million project. Also, when our president was here, both presidents, they cut the sod for the third terminal of Kotoka International Airport, and that is also undertaken by a Turkish company. And there is one big project in Central and Eastern region, which is supported by the Turkish Exim Bank. This is a water treatment project, and when we finish this, 3 million Ghanaians will have access to potable water. So just to give you an idea about these major projects. But we have a number of events coming on now. On the 24th and 27th, from 24th to 27th of August next week, we are going to have a big Turkish products fair. This will be the first of its kind in Ghana, and we hope that we will be able to repeat it every year.
Okay.
So I also see that Ghanaian business circles are interested in increasing our trade volume. Actually, Ghanaian Export Promotion Center, they will be going to next week to Izmir International Fair. So you see there are many things going on between the two countries on the economic side, but we have also social and cultural things.
So back to the power barge, somebody might be thinking, do you have power issues back in Turkey?
Sometimes we also face, but we have been selling electricity to our neighborhood. Turkey is a huge country, and we have a number of dams, especially in southeastern Turkey. But sometimes we could. It is possible because it's a big country, but it's nothing like here.
Well, I guess we should be saying thank you to Turkey, because you made a huge donation towards the June 3 flood disaster. So there's some projects around the Odo area which you actually contributed to. But are you equally benefiting from us?
Well, this is of course, it should be sustainable trade. If we talk about that, we are benefiting from you by increasing our trade relations, but it's also human to human relations is important. like we have been offering scholarships all these years, and more than 50 government scholarships, more than 50 every year. So there are many Ghanaians studying in Turkey, and they are coming back here to serve your people. I know a number of doctors, engineers, pharmacists, and they are at high positions in Ghana. So this is a human bond between the two countries. And we also have training programs for Ghanaians. These are mainly on training the trainers. So many different professions, people from many different professions, they go to Turkey and they are trained, and then when they come back, they are training others. So I think this is a valuable contribution to Ghanaian human resources.
Do you feel that what's happening in Turkey in terms of the aftermath of the coup, is it having any effect on trade in Ghana? Because I know that people, some of us go to Turkey to go and do business.
Actually, of course, when I think like a coup attempt happens, for a little while you have to wait and see what is going to happen next. But as you can see, our Turkish Airlines flights are normal. As I was referring earlier, we are going to have this big fair here. So and there's no Ghanaian person involved in any casualty at the night of the coup attempt. So actually everything in business back to normal.
So Ghanaians you are assuring of Ghanaian safety in Turkey?
Definitely. And now all the other countries who are sending tourists, they also started.
Do you feel that the conditions in Ghana are conducive for Turkish business?
Yes, very much so. But it will be, of course, I have to admit that things are a bit slow, and you have to push very hard. But it works. Ghana is a stable democracy. It has a strong democratic credentials, and then of course it's an English-speaking country. So you have and there is a political stability, which are most important elements to invest in one country. So you have the necessary means. But as I said, maybe things are a bit too slow.
What can we do to, what can we put into the environment to make it boost the business?
I think it will be more attitudes of the people. I think time is very important. For instance, in every relation, time is essential. So one of the difficulties one of the challenges, I should say, that we face is the attitude of the people vis-à-vis time. And then, of course, you have to. You have a good young population, and there should be more job opportunities for the youth, and education should be maybe stronger, and more business-minded people. There are so many things it can be improved.
I'm curious, and we're getting to the end of our conversation. I want to know about the relationship that you have with Russia. It's been talked about again in Western media, but how would you describe it?
Yeah, actually, if you look at the historical relationship between Turkey and Russia, when Turkey is a successor state of Ottoman Empire, so we always had this I should say maybe complicated relationship historically with the Russian, Russian Tsarist Russia, and then the Republic of Turkey later. And of course we ended up in different parts of the two poles. One is when we had the Cold War, we joined NATO, and Russia was heading the Soviet Union. So our relationship until the end of the Cold War was distant. But after that, it became more close, and Russia is one of our biggest trade partners. Our trade saw like over $30 billion at one stage. So this is so important for us to keep this close relationship, and Turkey is #1 destination for Russian tourists. But unfortunately, we had an incident because a Russian plane was on our airspace, violating our space. It was downed. And then there was a counter-reaction and sanctions, and it went on like that. Actually, during the coup attempt, it was also revealed that the two pilots who were in the plane, they might be part of this coup attempters, this terrorist organization. So now they are arrested, and the case against them is continuing. That's why just before the coup, we have already started reconciliation with Russia, and after the coup last week, our president was in Russia, and this is the first visit he paid abroad. So Russia is important for the region and important for the world. So we hope that everything will be back to normal with Russia as soon as possible.
Back home in Ghana, we have just about barely 4 months to an elections. What do you see? Do you see us prepared enough? I don't know how much of monitoring you've been doing. Our airwaves full of politics, a lot of banter. What do you see?
Well, of course, we are following it very closely. I am following it very closely, and I see a lot of concern about violence before, during, and after the elections. And we also realize how important this election is for both parties. And I'm sure that the Ghanaian people will do the right thing and vote for the best interest of their party, for their country. So we have been also calling for peaceful elections. It's important to have peaceful, transparent elections, and it should be also, fair elections. So I can see the concerned people's points, but I think like previous elections, there will be a lot of talk about this security of the elections, fear of violence, but I'm sure the Ghanaian people will do the right thing peacefully.
So finally, on the expo, what you have coming up, what do you expect? What do you want Ghanaians to do? Is it open to everybody?
Yes, of course. This will start on the 24th, and there will be more than 50 Turkish companies exhibiting their products, and it's free entry, and we would like to see as many Ghanaians as possible. And it's a pity that you don't have a bigger exhibition area, so we are going to do this in Movenpick Hotel. And you will see, I invite all the Ghanaians to come and see what sort of products, quality products with competitive prices we have.
Well, thank you very much for sitting with us in your office to have this conversation.
Thank you, and you're welcome. I'm happy to have you over here.
Sure.
Okay.